The areas in which our nutrition knowledge has expanded are fibre type. So this is really important for movements of fluid in the large intestine, and earlier cut hay has high water holding capacity. So there's heaps of information on those. Another one is maximum tolerable limits for horses, and they can very readily be exceeded. But also there's things, a lot of research on zinc, which it's almost impossible to poison a horse with zinc. However, the biome is very sensitive to zinc, and it's not uncommon to get excess zinc in affecting the microbiota. Mineral vitamin interactions, mineral ratios, changes in the manufacturer's formula. Sometimes they use least cost, or the seasons will change the availability. Grass species and season is a whole topic on itself, as is sugar and starch levels, and we don't have much fructan of the all cold climate grasses here, and fructan is involved in laminitis, but more from changing the environment in the cecum. It doesn't affect insulin. A lot more information on omega-3 fatty acids in humans and small animals as well, I'm sure you're aware. Effects of processing, glucose and insulin responses, toxin binders I'm not a big believer in, and of course the pro and post and symbiotics, and that's a lot of marketing around that, but there's obviously the knowledge is in a very early stage. Sources of energy and how they affect performance and muscle function, and the feeding management is really critical. This is just a quick look at what mineral interactions, what minerals interact with each other, which is basically a lot. And the importance of that really is when there's a huge excess of one that can interfere with another. So common problems with diet analysis. So most diet problems, as you'll be aware, don't cause acute or overt clinical disease, but they can cause a range of symptoms. Often the clinical signs of a nutrient balance are vague, difficult to diagnose, and not top of the differential diagnosis list. One of the most common ones are lysine and essential amino acid deficiencies, and that's primarily because the most important nutrient, most expensive nutrients for manufacturers to include are lysine, essential amino acids, biotin and vitamin E. So they're quite commonly deficient in most diets. Calcium phosphorus ratio, it's not just, we have a lot of oxalate containing pastures here, but the calcium phosphorus ratios are actually borderline or below minimum in many horses that are hand fed. Another big problem we see is overlap, where people use several supplements, or they're using a manufactured feed and throwing in a few more supplements. The diet can still be deficient, but certainly we have cases of overlap. Excess selenium, something we see, chronic hoof problems, and it's not usually something that's considered, but if you have a look at the diet, you'd be surprised sometimes at what people are feeding. Excess vitamin A is another one. It causes bone fragility, and a lot of manufacturers are pretty keen to add vitamin A, and the synthetic form is actually predisposes the horse to more toxicity than the natural form in leaching hay. Sugar and starch levels too high, and the nutrients below recommended daily intakes. So first we're going to look at the lysine amino acids. So every tissue in the body has its own recipe of amino acids, and there's over 500 amino acids in nature, but there's 22 which are used by all living things to make cells. Excuse me. Of those 22, the horse can make 12 by changing them, moving around some of the elements to make different combinations, but there's 10 that they can't make, and they're called essential amino acids, and they must be provided in the diet. So when we are actually looking at the protein, what protein requirements, we're trying to meet the horse's essential amino acid requirements.